another barbershop story today, given by the young barbershopper, not necessarily young, but young barbershopper, Gene Heupel.
Yes.
Are we rolling? Well, I'm Gene Heupel, and this is my barbershop story. I was born at a very early age in Medina, North Dakota. For those who know, Medina, North Dakota is an immigrant community of Germans from Russia. And in that community, when I grew up, music participation was an expectation. It's what you did. What I've been told is that my great-grandfather, Grandpa Mueller, on my mother's side, had been a conductor for the Russian Army Band when they lived over in Russia. I remember many family get-togethers on both sides of the family where my uncles and grandfather would gather around the piano and sing, usually from a church hymnal and often accompanied by a self-taught pianist.
What language?
They would sing both. Our hymnals back then had both languages.
What's both?
German and English. German and English. So, turns out this story almost didn't happen, by the way. I almost wound up Dennis Hirsch. My parents took the wrong kid home from the hospital.
Oh, no.
Well, once they got the coal stove going and got the house reheated and unwrapped the kid, they found that little beaded necklace or bracelet people they used to make, remember, with a piece of metal and all the letters, and yep, it was Dennis Hirsch. My mother said she when they first got home, she was like, God, that looks like Benny Hirsch. Well, it was Dennis Hirsch, and they met me coming on in an ambulance from Jamestown, because Dennis was only a day old, so they had to push it. It was winter. It was around New Year's, so anyway, that all got worked out, and I am who I am today. So many of you have talked about your vast barbershop experience in the early 50s. Well, my story won't begin to match the scope of your accomplishments because in 1954, I was just entering the first grade. So I got a little later start, probably because of when I was born or something. But anyway, in grade school, we actually would sing every morning as part of the curriculum. The teacher, when we were younger, would just teach us, and then as we got older, we could read. They actually passed out songbooks. And we'd sing at least for the first half hour or more. And then, of course, there was always lots of singing at church and Sunday school, the things that people used to go to, and those programs used to be pretty important. Then in the 5th grade, a used trombone appeared. I wasn't asked. There it was in the house. They didn't ask me. It was the expectation you to play the trombone. So they didn't know the trombone's a fairly difficult instrument to keep on pitch. Some of you know you have the tuning slide, of course, to tune the instrument itself, but then you can move that all over the place with your mouth. You can truly bend that everywhere you want to go. Then you got this pesky slide with 7 positions, and you got to kind of learn all of that stuff and be able to manage that. Well, at the end of the day, it was excellent training for hearing and finding the note. To this day, people will ask, do you read music? And I think about it, and I actually read trombone. When I look at the music, I see the slide position, and I know where my mouth has to be to make that sound. I actually read trombone. So anyway, in that school, of course, small school, and it started in 5th grade, and as soon as you could play well enough, you were put into the high school band. So I played in the high school band for 6 years. It only took me 4 years to get through, but I played in the high school band for 6 years, and I still do today. I play in the brass ensemble at church from time to time. So this is my first look at district and state music contests, including a public concert for the top performers that we give in the evening for the people in the community. Best we ever did, I played in a trombone trio, and we did manage a highly superior 1 rating at state. And we played in, for some of you who know, Jamestown College. I remember playing in the chapel of Jamestown College when we did our test for our contest for that. I started singing in high school and church choir about in the 8th grade. Again, small school, but music participation was expected. We had a 60-voice choir in a high school of just 100 students. So a lot of people participated. In the fall of 1966, I started college at North Dakota State University. I wasn't able to play in the band because every weekend I went home and worked on the farm. that was expected in the fall. You had fall's work to do, and on the weekends the band marched in the football games, so couldn't do that. I was able to sing, however, and audition and join the NDSU Oratorio Society and sang with them for 1 year. Then I auditioned and joined the Varsity Men's Glee Club, or Men's Chorus, we were called. We didn't have a cool name. The University of North Dakota had the Bards. Gary, you remember that, right? And they still do. We never did have a cool name. We were just the Varsity Men's Glee Club. When I auditioned, I was placed as a second tenor. And that was, I guess, fine. It surprised me a little bit, but our first rehearsals really weren't balanced, and Dr. Troutman, our conductor, asked who can sing bass. Well, I sang bass in high school, and so I raised my hand, and I've sung bass ever since. So that's how I got into bass. The Glee Club sang at service organization lunches, churches, other organizational events, and we had 2 public concerts a year. And I sang in the Glee Club until I graduated. So I stayed with them, and we had a pretty nice time, a gang of about 40 or 50 or 60 guys, whatever we had as it went along. An interesting sidebar, because I don't think I got a half hour's worth of material here, so I'll tell this story. I started college as a chemistry major, and I was good at chemistry. It was really easy for me, and everything was going really just fine, except after a couple quarters, I didn't like the smell in the polymers and coatings labs. I didn't like that at all. And there didn't seem to be a lot of people around. It didn't seem very social. So I switched majors, and I went into electrical engineering, which, of course, the going joke is social and electrical engineering. It's kind of an oxymoron. But, you know, if you've ridden a tractor 10, 12, 14 hours a day talking to nobody, you know, a room full of guys is pretty social. So I went into electrical engineering. Well, in doing that, I fell behind on all of the what they call it, where the things are sequenced. And back in those days, an electrical engineering degree required lots of other disciplines. So, for instance, when I graduated with a double E, I was actually 3 hours short of a minor in mechanical engineering. So it was quite cross-disciplinary type stuff. Well, part of it was you needed 3/4 of drafting. Truly, the board with the T-square and the triangles and the whole 9 yards, and you sharpen your pencil and you make nice letters. It was all that stuff. Well, I managed to get 2 of them done, but not the third, descriptive geometry. And I go through my thing, and all of a sudden, it's time to graduate. I never got descriptive geometry done. Now what do? So I walked into the head of the department, double E department, Dr. Anderson, and I sat down and talked to him. And I managed to get him to allow me to count Varsity Men's Glee Club for descriptive geometry. So I used singing to get rid of a curriculum requirement for an engineering degree. So that was wonderful. That worked well for me. So anyway, then I didn't sing. Literally did not sing for more than 20 years. I was moving around a bit, didn't really join the church, didn't sing anywhere. In 1991, I decided to sing at the closing ceremonies of the Special Olympics that was held on the Capitol steps. We had some rehearsals as a group, and then they had home resources to rehearse at home, and I was ready to go. We had 800 people show up for the tech rehearsal Saturday morning on the steps of the Capitol. We had 1,200 show up for the performance. Boy, that turned into chaos. But somehow we managed to get it done, and it worked because people truly wanted it to work. That was really quite the experience. I'll never forget the excitement and smiles on the faces of these Special Olympics kids as that buses came by and they were bringing them down for the ceremony. These kids were just wound up tight. I mean, they were having a great time. I'll never forget that look. Sometime later, I began singing in a small church choir of about 15 in the church that I belong to today. 4 of us formed a small a cappella quartet, a mixed a cappella quartet. Obviously, 4 is 4. We'd sing at church and strip malls at Christmas. We'd go around and with our books and we'd sing Christmas carols. Worst Christmas reception we ever got was at a Hallmark store. Everybody ignored us. The clerks, the customers, everybody ignored us. It was like we were invisible. So I got over that. In 1996, the Billy Graham Crusade came to Minneapolis, and I sang in the choir at the Billy Graham Crusade at the Metrodome, we'd sing every night, 8,000 voices. That was really something. And these people from the Billy Graham Crusade, were they the pros on how to handle an organization that big, a choir that big. And once again, though, the singers really wanted it to work well, and it did. In 2008, with the urging of a niece of mine who was a music major now at University of Minnesota, encouraged to sing with the University of Minnesota Oratory Society of Minnesota Summer Course, it was called, which was a 3-week-long, highly intensive thing to sing with a professional orchestra at 10-man home. We sang Durfle's Requiem in Latin. Well, we didn't sing a lot of Latin in North Dakota, so that was a push, but it worked. The next year I sang the summer course again, so obviously getting back up to speed a bit and getting a little better and remembering a little more. And then starts my barbershop life. I didn't have a clue what that meant. And when I got involved, I was just flabbergasted with the size and history of the organization. I had no idea all that was going on. So my brother-in-law, Ron Ketterling, had joined the Commodores somewhere around 2006 or 7, and my wife and I went to a Commodore show in the fall of 2009. Afterwards, Ron once again plotted me in to sing with the Commodores. Great time to start, he said. We're just starting the Christmas music and everyone is in the same boat for what they know and don't know. Well, I went to my first meeting and the guys around me were singing the songs like old familiar Christmas carols. We could have been singing Jingle Bells. I mean, they were fine. I didn't know anything. Either Ron was lying or he was just playing politics. I don't know which it was, but anyway, I jumped in with both feet and literally practiced the entire song list twice a day to be ready in 6 weeks for that first Christmas concert. My first barbershop contest was a trip down memory lane. Not much different than high school. Pretty much on the way. In fact, it was in a high school. The main difference, as I could see it, is there were more judges, and in high school you weren't allowed to critique the judges. I sang full-time with the customers for 4 years, during time which I served on the board. I implemented Groupanizer that had been around for about a year, and really not much had happened with it, and Slattery asked me to do it, and we were down in Mexico and probably went too many margaritas, and I sent Dan a note and said, yeah, I'll do that for you. So turns out, with my background and education things, I was the right person for the job, because the Groupanizer at that time, implementation methods assumed a computer literate course. Everybody. That wasn't going to work, so I made up my own methods. I loaded every member's profile and password information. Basically, I cheated. I wrote the onboarding work instructions, offered training sessions, and it worked pretty well. Although I was burning learning tracks for a few people after that, but it worked out. It's working still today, I believe. I know it is, actually. I never missed a meeting out of convenience, or I just don't feel like it. That's the honest to God truth. This included birthdays and even an anniversary. I always made sure I was at rehearsal. Never did sing in a quartet. Several months after joining, I asked some of the leadership ranks as to what that was all about. The response I got was generally, there aren't enough tenors. So I was working for NSP, and of course, at NSP, you understand bureaucracies, and I understand succession planning. So I was fine with it, and went on and just sang in the chorus. A few years later, a quartet night was started on Monday night, and I was invited to attend. However, by now, there was a conflict, as I had another rehearsal. 2 years after joining the Commodores, I auditioned and joined the Oratory Society of Minnesota, and they rehearsed on Monday night. So that was the conflict. So for 2 years, I sang both with the Commodores and the Oratory Society. Things got really busy. Never seemed to be a conflict of rehearsals and performances, but it was pretty busy. After the 2013 Commodores Christmas show, I talked to Paul Wigley that I wouldn't be singing in the Spring Shore contest because I had an opportunity to sing in the Prague Choral Festival in July, and I needed to focus on that. I told him, not going there to lip sync. If I'm going that far, I'm going to be able to contribute. So Also, if the Commodores made it international, I wouldn't be able to go. I talked with Jim Richards and told him I thought it would be unfair to others to help get to international and not show up. He thought I should sing anyway. That was Jim. Thought I should sing anywhere. I told them and others that I'd return for the 2014 Christmas show. Well, I didn't make the 2014 Christmas show. An opportunity to sing a Downton Abbey Christmas with the Oratorio Society came up, and I chose that. And I continued to rehearse and sing the regular season with the Oratorio Society. Even though I don't sing regularly with the Commodores, I've continued my membership and friendship. I volunteer for the annual Commodores nut sales bagging event at Dick Riemenschneider's house. Where else can you get that kind of unique experience? Interesting story about Jim Richards, who, by the way, I stood next to on the risers for a couple years. I had not been singing with the Commodores. As I recall, it was the Harold Hill program to help train how to approach people and what to say to them, to encourage them to sing, try singing some barbershop. And one of the opening lines was, "Where do you do your singing?" That's how you kind of introduce and broach the subject and so on. So I walk into Dick's house, and there is Jim, busy filling nuts, and without looking up, the first thing he says to me is, "So Gene, where do you do your singing?" It was Jim Richards who had invited me more than once to come to the Friday lunch bunch, and he's who I called when I needed the address to come here for the first time. I make time to sing with the Barbershop Honor Chorus at barbershopper funerals whenever I'm invited and able. I've sung the national anthem with the combined chorus for the Twin Cities game with one of my sons. He's not a singer. I got him the learning tracks and the music, and by golly, he did learn the music, and I could hear him singing the right words and notes. He's another trombone player. So all things come around, and I finally made it back to the Commodores to sing the 2017 Christmas concert with them. That was a lot of fun. And that's my barbershop story for now.
All right.